It is the 22nd episode of Nosebleed Radio. That means we kick off this week's edition with our famous number 22s. We dive right into the talking points. France wins the World Cup. All-Star Game and Home Run Derby happened at the beginning of the week this week. And a lot of things happened there. There's a lot of things to talk about, lots of headlines there. Manny Machado, Brad Hand also traded before the second half of the season starts, something we haven't seen in a while. So we'll talk about that. NBA also making a little bit of moves, making headlines for themselves in the summer. And we'll wrap it up with our final thoughts. So, without further ado, let's roll the music.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
You're listening to Nosebleed Radio. Here's your host, Tucker Franklin.
What's going on, guys? Episode 22 of Nosebleed Radio. I'm here with my boys. We're down a man today. KB, Kieran Brennan.
How's it going?
And Shane Miller.
How's it going, Roll Hawks?
Now we're down Toby Todd. Couldn't be with us. Scheduling
He's
conflict.
en route.
He's en route. Scheduling conflict. Had to get the episode recorded. Had to get it out. Just couldn't be here with us today. So we'll go ahead and move on to our famous number 22s. KB, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start. My famous number 22 is my favorite baseball player of all time, and that's David Eckstein. He's not really a well-known name. He's no Babe Ruth, Albert Pujols, Mike Trout, anybody like that. But he was my favorite baseball player growing up. He was the shortstop and leadoff man for the St. Louis Cardinals, I think from 05 to 07, maybe 08. He was 2006 World Series MVP. He was a small guy, but he was gritty, and I aspired to play a lot like him. So he's my favorite number 22.
He's a good player. I can remember watching him play in those World Series, and he played baseball the right way. Shane, what's yours?
I'm going with the man, Doug Flutie. Not sure if he could see over any offensive line he played behind, but he still was able to sling the ball around quite a bit. Everyone remembers him from the Hail Flutie, that game against Miami, which makes it even better for me because I hate Miami. But the last second Hail Mary to win the game, one of football's greatest moments. I think every football fan knows about the Hail Flutie.
You'd have to think so. It's one of the most remembered, I think, most replayed events in college football history.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that... What would you say another most replayed event in college football is?
A more recent one that'll be played forever is that Iron Bowl where he ran it back, the missed field goal.
Right,
that'll be one forever.
Right, and I think sometimes we get captive of I don't know what I want to say. Hold captive of how recent things happen.
Yeah.
What do they call that? A victim of
recency bias. Recency bias,
yeah. I think sometimes that happens, but I think that's one of those things that is great.
Yeah.
And
I think that highlight will hold the test of time. I think that'll be there for generations. Another one looking back, you can always think of, the Stanford band marching on the field.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. The band is on the field. The band is on the field. Everyone remembers that call.
Ooh, another one I just came to my head. You might not like this one, but Vince Young in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
Running to the corner. That's a very replayed college football clip.
I wasn't going to win either way in that game because I hate USC and Texas, so Vince Young was an incredible athlete, so you can't fault him for that.
Yeah, Shane and I sometimes play the game, what college don't you like, or do you like?
Yeah, it's a way shorter list than the ones I don't like.
Right. Sometimes I just don't understand, and USC is one of those.
I think growing up with such abysmal teams trying to cheer for, you become resentful a little bit. Because I have so much passion for the game of football, but I have been my heart's been ripped out so many times from just abysmal Nebraska teams. I lived through the Callahan era, got let down by Bo Pelini all the time. Just recently went through the Mike Riley. Mike Riley was like a rebound X. We were just trying to prove to Bo Pelini we could find someone else really quick. So we had Mike Riley, who really showed some flashes of maybe he can do something, but then ultimately was just not a good head coach. So hopefully now we got a good one.
Yeah, you might. I don't know. You'll probably
will
run him
tell.
out in 3 years.
Nope, we'll give him at least 5.
All right, that's fine. My famous number 22 is the Rocket, Roger Clemens, one of the best pitchers of all time. You may be able to say, well, you can say anything and then say arguably in front of it. So I'll say arguably the greatest strikeout pitcher of all time. Probably him and Randy Johnson are the two. Nolan Ryan as well.
I think Randy Johnson takes the cake for me. That dude was an animal.
Yeah, have you ever seen the at-bat of Randy Johnson and John Kruk in the All-Star game?
Yeah.
And where he just absolutely scares pretty much John Kruk.
Yeah.
Because
Randy Johnson's got another all-time highlight that'll be played forever is with the bird.
Yeah.
Where he just literally just evaporated a bird.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty sweet. Vaporized, that was what I was looking for. Not evaporated.
Yeah, that's fine. Maybe it evaporated. Who knows? Before we get into the talking points, I started something on Instagram. Instagram just released Instagram questions, which I find very interesting. Instead of people asking me a question, I like to ask people a question themselves. I had on my story who your favorite athlete was of all time in any sport. And I know I asked you guys this before I put it out on my story, but do you want to share who your favorite athlete was?
Actually, I already talked about my favorite athlete. My favorite athlete was, in fact, David Eckstein. Or, growing up, I still am a big fan of Tim Tebow. You know, those are just two guys who, in my mind, played the game the right way and inspired me to play the game the right way. Tim Tebow was more of a superstar at college than David Eckstein was in the major leagues, but I don't know. Something about the way David Eckstein played, he wasn't the guy that always hit the big home run or stuff like that, but he always found a way to contribute to his team, whether it be defensively or offensively. He was the leadoff guy, so he was a table setter. So just getting on base and finding a way to help his team win.
Yeah, my favorite athlete is won't surprise you guys, but a football player. But Jason Witten has always been my favorite athlete, just of anything, and especially my favorite Cowboy of all time. You know, being a big Cowboys fan. But I remember some of the reasons being just the dude is a workhorse. Like, he is the toughest player I think to ever play the game of football. He's played with his jaw wired shut after just recently breaking his jaw. He's played with a ruptured spleen. He's played with broken ribs, punctured lungs, and completely played through these games. They started in over 200 consecutive games with the Cowboys. Just an absolute animal. That we'll never see another guy like that in the league anymore, I don't think, at least in our lifetime. He was just another breed of human beings, being able to play for 15 years the way that he did. But also, he was the reason that he was the reason I wasn't really upset about playing tight end when I was a kid. Because my fourth grade year, I played quarterback. It was the first year of tackle football. I played quarterback. Wasn't really a gunslinger, put it that way. I just kind of handed the ball off and would run around the edge. But I liked playing quarterback, and I remember when I moved up to my new team in fifth grade, I got beat out by this kid who was actually a pretty good quarterback. But and my dad, who was one of the coaches, was like, "You're going to play tight end." And I was like, "Well, this is stupid. I don't want to be a lineman." And my dad, I remember, said, "Look at this guy." He looked up Jason Witten highlights, showed me his highlights for the Cowboys. He's like, "This dude is the right type of football player. He doesn't complain. He's a team guy first. He does everything he's supposed to do, and he's still out there, making catches and making touchdowns." So I was like, "All right, maybe I can be tight end." So I've been just like enumerated with Jason Witten from then on. But another thing I really like about Jason Witten, I kind of just hit on it, is he was such a team guy, which I really admired. When he announced his retirement, Coach Jason Garrett, spoke about him a little bit, and he told a story about at their kind of end of the season meetings, all the veteran players kind of give up and give speeches, and Jason Witten broke down this play. I don't remember what the route it was called. It was like a Y option pass or something. But he explained why it was perfect for Jason Witten, like himself, like why it worked for him, because Des Bryant did his job over here. Des Bryant was such a good athlete. They had to double guard him, which helped him leave wide open. Tony Romo making the play happen by being able to move around the pocket, look downfield. You could always depend on him. He gave a lot of credit to the offensive line, how they were able to hold off the pass rush to give Tony Romo time to let the play develop. So just hearing a guy who's like, he's going to be a Hall of Famer for sure, to not take credit for his own greatness, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think there's something about humble superstars that people like.
Yeah.
I'll just bring it up right now. The league, MLB, and Mike Trout are kind of in a little spat because they say that Mike Trout doesn't do enough to market himself.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Trout says he doesn't really want to market himself because he's just so humble. And
I love that.
He goes to like children's hospitals on his own time. He does community work in his own time, but you don't really hear about that. Number one, because MLB isn't very good at marketing, and number two, because he doesn't make a big deal out of it.
MLB is terrible about marketing. Like, if you don't live within like 200 yards from the baseball stadium, you're not gonna be able to watch it on your TV because they suck at playing like other games other than like the Yankees on every TV. But Mike Trout, I respect the hell out of it, just being like, I'm just here to play baseball. You know, I love baseball. It's my sport. I don't really care about being like some big shot celebrity, even though he's living in Los Angeles. You know, I'm just here to play baseball. Here to play ball, coach. Put me in.
Yeah,
I like it.
I think Mike Trout is easily the best in the game. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
We've had
For
debates
sure.
about this before, but since Bryce Harper said that Mike Trout was the best in the game, I have to agree with my favorite player in saying that Mike Trout is the best in the game. We'll move on to our talking points. One of the big ones since we last talked. Last week was a big soccer show. We talked a lot about soccer, the old football. You know, the everywhere else in the world pastime. And France won the World Cup. Kind of not a shock, really. People expected France to really win, but they ran away with it. They won 4-2 off two big goals. Or they had one from Pogba, where Pogba finally showed up and scored a goal. Kylian Mbappe scored a goal, that young stud. But Croatia did score a goal, and you could say garbage time to make it 4-2 and almost make it a game. But overall, I watched the game after I got out of church, and at that point when I got out of church, it was pretty much already done because it was 2-1, 3-1 at that point. So I thought it was a good soccer game.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it while I was working at Paisan, so I was rooting hard for Croatia. Just because I predicted they'd win, and I'm too proud to like admit when I'm wrong. But France was just obviously the better team in that game. They controlled the game so much more than Croatia. They showed a stat for like the first half. Croatia really held the ball a lot more than they did. Their time of possession was like, I don't want to say like way over France's, but it was enough that you would think if they were a better team than France, they would be winning the game handedly. And France was up at that point. I don't remember the score right now. I think it was 2-1 or 3-1 at that point. But so just France was so much more efficient with the ball than Croatia was. And again, this is coming from someone who watches like 2 soccer games a year, if that. So take that what you will with that. But I just thought France looked like clearly the better team in that game.
In the first half, for the first, let's say 30 minutes of the 45, Croatia looked like they wanted it more than France. They were aggressive. They were in the offensive zone. Like you said, they controlled the ball for much more of the of the first half than France. But in the first half, that's when France got the goal off the free kick and the handball. So even though Croatia seemed like the better team in the first half, France was able to capitalize off their opportunities, like you said, better than Croatia was. If Croatia was skill level up, if they had, Croatia had good players, don't get me wrong, but they did not have players up to the level of Pogba and Mbappe, which is understandable. Those are two of the best players in the world. But if you have to be led to believe that if Croatia has star players like Pogba and Mbappe, that they would be leading in the first half. And I think that France team is just, even though they were one of the youngest teams in the tournament, I think only Nigeria was younger than them, that this team was experienced. This team, a lot of those guys play professionally, whether it be in the EPL, the German league in Italy. These guys play a lot of soccer, and you had to think Croatia trailed in every game they played in the World Cup. So you had to think that their Cinderella time, kind of like Loyola Chicago. Their Cinderella time had to run up eventually, and unfortunately, like Shane, I was rooting for Croatia. Unfortunately, this Cinderella, the clock struck midnight in the World Cup final, and it was a good game. It was a great finals game to cap off a great World Cup, and I just can't wait. Hopefully, the Women's World Cup lives up to this one, and I can't wait until it's where is it in Qatar?
It's in France.
Yeah, is it Qatar or Qatar?
I
thought they changed name to Qatar.
I've heard it's Qatar.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've always thought it was Qatar.
Football gloves?
I've always thought it was Qatar, but I've heard recently that they want it called Qatar.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. That sounds so dumb.
Also, how big of a scandal is I say scandal, but the whole FIFA organization is just corrupt. How do you put a World Cup in a freaking desert? Okay, it's in a desert. And now the World Cup, I don't know if you saw this, is scheduled for November and December of 2020. Right? 2020?
Because they can't play it in the summer.
Right, because it's so hot.
Yeah.
So why do you even schedule it there? Because of the money.
Yeah. Well, did you hear, what's his name? John Oliver's spiel about it on his show Last Week Tonight with John Oliver? It's the funniest thing ever if you haven't seen it. Look it up. But, like, he brings up, like, serious points. He's like, they scheduled the World Cup in a place that averages, like, because at this point when he said this, they didn't change the dates of it. It was still scheduled for the summer. He said they scheduled it in a place where the average of, like, 125 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So they schedule a game in a place where the game cannot be played. Like, that's like if we scheduled the Super Bowl in the middle of a lake. Like, you just wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
And this could be wrong because it's Twitter, but 2 years ago before I think it was when the Women's World Cup was going on, I saw tweets that was like the place in Qatar where they're having the World Cup didn't really exist yet. Like the city hadn't been built yet. So how bad are these other places that are wanting the World Cup that they went with a place that didn't really exist yet? Like that's crazy. But I know it'll be held in the United States in a couple years, so that'll be fun. So maybe we should go.
Another crazy stat, we should definitely go, by the way.
Yeah,
but another crazy stat was so many people have died in Qatar or whatever building this new stadium for the World Cup. It is now the deadliest construction project since the Great Pyramids of Egypt. Like, more people have died building this than anything else since the Great Pyramids.
We're seeing how the official pronunciation is now.
What's the official pronunciation of pronunciation? Is it pronunciation?
Probably the wrong fossil and the wrong syllable. It just gives you the Arabic.
Sweet. That helps.
Yeah. Well, you don't speak Arabic here at Nosebleed Knowledge. Arabic.
I believe it's Arabic.
We don't know how to pronounce things either. We'll go ahead and move on. I mean, it was a good soccer game. It was a good World Cup. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was. It was the most entertaining World Cup I've seen.
Right. Oh, by far. Even though the United States wasn't in it, which is a real shame, because I think the United States could have made a little noise in this tournament. I don't think they could have won it, but they could have made a little bit of noise, maybe get soccer back on the map a little bit.
Yeah.
But oh well, we've already qualified for the 2026, and like Kieran, I definitely think we should go to one of those games. Start saving now. We'll move on to the All-Star Game and Home Run Derby. Two very exciting events. I watched both of them. I wrote a blog about how I didn't like the Home Run Derby. The field of the Home Run Derby, I should say, before the Home Run Derby started. And then I wrote a blog after the Home Run Derby saying how I liked the Home Run Derby. So you could call me wishy-washy, that's fine. But the MLB really swayed my opinion on that. I thought the guys in the Home Run Derby weren't good enough to be in the Home Run Derby. But they showed that they were good enough. Bryce Harper showed why he's the most electric player in baseball. He has the charisma that people love to see, the individualism, the personality. You get that in every other sport. It seems like football, basketball. You get that in baseball a lot. And I think that's what baseball needs to be able to market. And Bryce Harper's probably the most marketable athlete right now.
Baseball needs to eventually realize that they're in the entertainment business. Like, yes, they're a sport, and they should keep it traditional to an extent. But at the end of the day, you're in the entertainment business and you live and die by people watching games and tuning in to watch games. So I agree they're going to have to change and bring in more guys like Bryce Harper, or at least show more stuff like that. But the home run derby was great. They had some great moments. Schwarber killed it. I was actually rooting for him to win it. He did amazing, obviously. Then Bryce Harper came back and pulled off an incredible feat. A lot of people were pissed saying that like Bryce Harper and his dad cheated because they didn't let his balls drop before they threw the other pitch, which was dumb. I think that's just like people trying to find something to be mad about, because anyone else just watching it and enjoying it, it was a great derby.
Yeah, I think the MLB, the tough thing about the MLB is that they, like you guys have been saying all episode, they don't give their guys great national exposure. On ESPN, you see the same 3 or 4 teams every time. It's always Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, and Dodgers, and then whoever else they're playing, the 4 major markets across. So I think the purpose, and I have not taken a single business class in college, and I don't know anything about business, but I think the goal here was to give exposure to the guys who don't normally get exposure. So like Freddie Freeman, Rhys Hoskins, Alex Bregman, the guys who may not get a lot of exposure. I think the goal was to get them a lot of exposure, and I think it was a great home run derby. We had a good showing from Rhys Hoskins, who I know Tucker didn't think he would do too hot. He really showed out. Javi Baez didn't do too great. Kyle Schwarber really showed out, unfortunately, as a guy who doesn't like the Cubs too much. I think the nitpicking about Bryce Harper hitting the ball before it landed was really should be pointed back to Kyle Schwarber, just saying, hey, maybe not hit the ball as far next time. Maybe hit it just over the fence instead of these 900-foot moonshots that you were hitting. And maybe you could hit more rapidly. In terms of the All-Star game, I think this was one of the best All-Star games we've had in years. Went extra innings, and it had 10 home runs in it, which I know as a longtime baseball fan, I love all types of baseball games, pitchers duels, stuff like that. But in terms of all-star games and trying to get national exposure, this was the best thing that you could ask for. 10 home runs, a lot of offense. This is what you pay to see for in the all-star game. You don't want to go to an all-star game and see a 1-0 pitchers duel or a 2-1 pitchers duel. You want to see the firepower from your favorite athletes. And I think this will help baseball. Baseball's kind of had a publicity issue, kind of like being popular with the young generation. So I think this All-Star game, it certainly didn't hurt.
No, I think it was a great All-Star game. Like you said, you know what they say, chicks dig the long ball, so the more home runs we can get in an All-Star game, the better.
It was a very modern type of baseball game.
Yeah.
I know we talk about, or KB and I on Turn 2 a lot, talk about how strikeouts are up, home runs are up. Last year we set a record for home runs. We'll probably break that record again.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of strikeouts in this game. Don't let that fool you that there's 10 home runs, but there was a ton. I think 21 strikeouts is what it was and 10 home runs. So I mean, it's unreal the power that is in today's game. Especially like Wilson Contreras hitting that home run was a sight to see. Especially he was emotional getting named to the All-Star team. Then he gets a home run in the All-Star game. Gene Segura hit a go-ahead 3-run home run, a guy who's been really not given that much attention all year. Karen and I have talked about him a lot on Turn 2 as he needs really more attention. Chris Sale had a really good start, struck out, had a scoreless first inning. Max Scherzer had 4 Ks in the All-Star game. Just really, really great. And I love too, what the MLB's doing now. I wrote a blog about it earlier this year, about how they need to start doing more interviews during the game.
Agreed.
And they did that, and you can really see the personalities of these guys when you interview them in the middle of the game. And I think that's very important, especially in marketing, is to see the personalities of these guys and make sure you can market it. Scooter Gennett, a guy that's really been swept under the rug. I believe he was he a free agent signing, or was he off the waiver wire? Something like that the Reds got. He hit a clutch 2-run home run in the 9th inning to send it into extra innings. And then, you just can't say enough about these Astros. They're a good baseball team. They went back-to-back on another Dodgers pitcher, which is kind of like a flashback of the World Series. Game 5, I believe, right?
Oh, God, yeah, that was awesome.
Oh, yeah. That World Series last year, unreal. That was one of the best World Series I think I've ever watched, and I watched the Royals win a World Series. So, I mean, that's what I have to say about that.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of keeping score by hand. That's one of my favorite things to do. In this game, I can remember the first game I ever kept score on a score sheet was an All-Star game. Back in about 2005. I believe it was 2005 All-Star game. It had been the 2004 All-Star game because the Red Sox beat the Cardinals that year. So it was a 2004 All-Star game. I took score of that game, and that's the first time I ever kept score. All-Star games are very hard to keep score because of all the substitutions and everything, but I love it. It just shows like everyone gets in, everybody got to play. All-Star games should be more fun in more leagues than that they really are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know, like, people, especially in the NFL, people are like, oh, it's the Pro Bowl. Nobody watches the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
They need to make that better. I think that this is where the MLB really has an edge on everybody, is that their All-Star break. They have a home run derby. People watch the home run derby. People watch the All-Star game. And not in a lot of leagues, like NBA, people don't really watch the All-Star game anymore because it's more like a dunk contest. The dunk contest has gone downhill for the NBA. And I think this is where the MLB really capitalizes.
Have I talked about my idea to make the Pro Bowl better in the NFL on the show?
I don't think so.
Okay, so here's my idea to make the Pro Bowl at least more interesting for 1 year to make people watch it again. So we all know esports is on the up and up, right? That's kind of like a new thing coming up. You hold a Madden tournament, and the two people, so it's like a national Madden tournament, it could go on for weeks before the Pro Bowl, whatever. But the two people who make it to the championship for the Madden tournament coach the Pro Bowl and call all the plays and defensive schemes for it, like from the booth. Like they'll throw up like play options and stuff like they would on Madden. They'll go through that team's like playbook on Madden, hit the button they want, it'll send it down to the coach, coach calls a play, and that team has to run that play. I think it'd be dope.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good idea to get some people interested, but I feel like all All-Star games suffer in the fact that, like, the purpose of the All-Star game, the MLB used to have the best All-Star game in the world, and I strongly believe that it still does, simply because of the fact that it had something on the line. The winner got home field advantage for the World Series, which we've seen in past years has been a big deal. But now that it doesn't, and now they're just the MLB, NHL, NBA, and NFL All-Star games are just all kind of riding on the fact that, hey, you guys get to see all of your favorite players, all the best players in the league play on the same court at the same time. I feel like if you're not going to the game, then I really haven't had as much interest in watching the games in years past. If I'm not going to the game, I'm not really interested in it because I can be like, well, all my favorite players play on the same team, so I'll just watch them all play. And if I want to see Nolan Arenado play, I'll just watch the highlights of the Rockies the next day, or I'll watch the Rockies game.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, as a Cardinals fan, I don't like the Cubs. I don't like the Reds, so I don't really want to watch the Cubs players and the Reds players be successful. So I don't know. That's just my opinion on the whole thing. I wish they would make it so that the All-Star game meant something again, kind of get the fans involved, because I feel like that's what the MLB is missing out on is viewer involvement. That's all.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and keep on the topic of MLB. There were a couple deals done that will impact a lot of teams. The Dodgers traded for Manny Machado, and the Orioles got 5 prospects in return, which if you think a 5-for-1 deal for really anybody is kind of absurd.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's exactly what they needed right now, though, because they're dead last in the MLB. They're garbage. Like, if you watch an Orioles game, like, it's almost frustrating to watch because they're so bad. That's the one thing I'll say about the MLB, since they don't really air games that are close or far away from me. I don't have to watch the Orioles, so that's kind of nice. But it probably sucks for all the people, in Baltimore having to watch those games all the time. So they knew their most profitable player, their best player right now was Machado, and they're like, all right, we can either try to spend some money right now to get guys to help Machado and help us win right now, or we can play the long game and trade Machado for these prospects. So what they're doing is they're investing in their team in the future, which I think is smart. It's similar to the Jimmy Johnson Herschel Walker deal in Dallas, where they got rid of their one good player because back then they were garbage except for Herschel Walker. They got rid of their one good player, got a bunch of like draft picks and deals for the future, and made their team in the future much better to go on and win Super Bowls. So I think this was good for the Orioles to benefit them in the long run.
I think it's good for both teams, really, because the Dodgers really need that piece or that shortstop because they had Seager, right? Seager's a shortstop.
Yep.
Yeah, he's injured. I get him and Bellinger confused. That's probably not something I should get confused about. I get him and those two confused. But he's out for the season, so they need a shortstop. And now they just got an all-star shortstop.
A stud.
A guy who was voted as the best shortstop in the American League by the fans. Yeah. Now they have him. His bat comes into that lineup, the lineup that has already been hot coming into this all-star break because they worked their way back into first place, which KB here called on one of our first episodes of Turn 2 when the Dodgers were bad. He said that they'd be back in first place by the all-star break, and they were. Not a big deal. He called it.
Nostradamus KB over there.
I think that this is the best case scenario for Orioles, Dodgers, and the New York Yankees. I think that the Orioles get 5 prospects. They are a team that is suffering. They need to reload their farm system. I would not be surprised if they also part ways with Adam Jones and Zach Britton before the July 31st deadline. I think this is great for the Dodgers because they gave up only one of their prospects that was in the top 100, I believe. I've been known to be wrong. And Manny Machado is a rental. He's taken the place of Corey Seager, so he's not really pushing anybody out of the starting spot. And this Dodgers team is now I think the NL favorite the favorite to represent the National League in the World Series. And I think it favors the New York Yankees because I'm in the majority, I think, when I believe that the New York Yankees are going to sign Machado in the offseason, and the fact that they didn't have to give up anybody, the Yankees were one of the teams that were going to trade to get Machado this year, but they didn't have to give up any prospects this year, so they're still going to have a strong farm system, and then they'll just throw a bunch of money at him this offseason and still potentially get him. I think it's a win for them. So this Machado deal is really good. I think the Orioles did a great job getting 5 prospects, which is relatively unheard of for one player, a 5 for one player. That's unreal. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get anywhere from 4 to 6 more prospects for Britton and Adam Jones before the deadline.
I would really, really hate the Yankees if they bought Manny Machado.
I already hate them. So
I know, me too, but can you imagine how much you'd hate them if they had Manny Machado and Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge and Didi Gregorius, who's been almost surprisingly good this year? I just wouldn't be able to stand him, at all.
Shane, you brought up a very good point there for not really being a baseball guy. You brought up a very good point that Didi Gregorius is their shortstop.
And Gleyber Torres.
Yeah.
Gleyber Torres, second baseman. Pretty much a middle infielder. He plays shortstop as well. I know he did in the minors at least. Where's Manny Machado going to go? Where's the room for Manny Machado?
I know one of the things Manny Machado didn't want. One of the things that he wanted to do when he got traded was to go back to shortstop. Even though I believe he was a Gold Glove winning third baseman for the Orioles, he didn't like it that much. So he wanted to go back to shortstop. So they traded him to the Dodgers, where he would have the potential of where he will play shortstop. Justin Turner plays third base. I think for the Yankees to sign him, they'll have to tantalize him with a crap ton of money and the possibility of winning the World Series, which if they get him, you can pencil them
in
at 3-1 favorites to win the World Series. That's a guarantee.
You can't just forget about the Red Sox, too. The Red Sox are going to make moves. If they get Machado, they're definitely going to go get somebody. But
They're going to have to.
in the Red Sox case, every time that it seems like the Yankees have made a move for offense, the Red Sox have went and got pitching. So, if you look at the Red Sox rotation right now, it's good. It's not the best in the American League because the Astros are American League, but it's probably second best in the American League. If they were in the National League, they'd be the best in the National League. Mm-hmm. So, I think that the Red Sox really build themselves around pitching. And I'd like to see what happens. Well, who knows? I've heard rumblings about Machado going to Boston too. So he's just chasing money, is what Machado's doing.
Which I don't hate. It's a job.
Yep, it is. Can't hate on him because he's trying to secure that bag like all of us are.
Speaking of hate, do you guys want to drink the haterade, or you want to just move on to NBA?
Yeah. I also want to hit on another deal that happened, but we'll go ahead and talk about Josh Hader. Not a great look for old buddy up in Milwaukee.
Nope.
Tweeting out some very not good. We'll just go ahead and... I don't want to read the tweets because they're not good.
Explicit doesn't even begin to describe the tweets. They were so bad.
I don't consider myself someone easily offended, but when I was reading some of those tweets, I got offended because I was like, "Oh, that's just not something you say."
No, not at all. He was dropping hard R's, hard R's on multiple tweets, which as a white guy is really never something you want to do. That's the number one thing you can't do as a white guy.
I know after the national championship for the basketball game, Dante DiVincenzo kind of got the same thing where they went back and they saw some tweets and they're like, oh, this isn't good stuff. There was also somebody else who this happened. Josh Allen. Happened to Josh Allen. But Hader took it to another level.
It was so bad.
The fact that only one of those was a blatant quote from a semi-pro.
Yeah.
And the other ones were just
they were rough. If you haven't seen them, Google it because they're bad.
Yeah, the fact that he just straight up said something like, I hate gay people, the N-word, stuff like that, it just, like Tucker said, Tucker doesn't get easily offended. He was offended. This is just tough stuff. I don't understand how you can be a professional athlete and you don't think maybe I should delete these tweets from
high school. He was 17 at the time.
Or just delete your Twitter.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. If you ever get famous in any way whatsoever, the first thing I'm doing is deleting my Twitter. I don't even have bad tweets. But someone will go through your old tweets and find a way to make it twist your words or whatever. So no matter what, I'm deleting my Twitter because past me is gone and now I'm famous me. I got to be a whole new person at this point. But you know who this was really good for? Papa John's, because people stopped talking about his racist stuff, and now we're moving on to Josh Hader as a racist.
Oh, that's true. Oh, crap, I was going to say something.
Oh, my bad.
Well, KB thinks about that. I just looked up some of my tweets from when I was 17 years old, and I tweeted the word swag way too many times. So, when I was 17 years old, would have been in 2016?
I was going to say it was not very long ago.
No, it wasn't very long ago. So, I tweeted swag greater than school, so incriminate me there.
True.
I've tweeted some very scandalous things, including that, so better watch out.
Do you remember we went through my Facebook posts from when I was in 6th or 7th grade?
Yeah.
And they're just so cringy.
Chores
they're so
suck.
bad. Yeah, chores at my house suck. That was literally one of my Facebook posts. But I'm deleting that right away if I get famous. I'm deleting my whole Facebook.
Right. No, you don't want people to know you said that. Remember when people were digging around in Kevin Durant's tweets and he said, I'd bathe in, was it who? Jennifer Lawrence's bathwater?
Yes. Yeah. I think it was Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah. That's not a good thing.
He'd drink her bathwater.
He'd drink her bathwater. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be drinking anyone's bathwater. Let's be honest here. The last thing I want to talk about on the MLB, KB and I didn't get to record a turn 2 this week, so we're basically airing all of our MLB dirty laundry here. Brad Hand was traded to the Cleveland Indians. Him and, let me pull this deal up real quick. Clymer was his name. Adam Clymer. And in exchange for prospect Francisco Mejia. If you read my This Week in MILB blog, you will know that Francisco Mejia is frequently mentioned on there because he's a very good baseball player. And this is a 2-for-1 deal, which I think the 2 outweighs the 1, obviously. In any math class, you know that.
Even I know that.
To get Brad Hand and Adam Clymer for 1 prospect and Francisco Mejia is an absolute steal for the Cleveland Indians. Granted, Francisco Mejia is an absolute stud catcher, and I know he's behind Yan Gomes up in the major leagues, but Brad Hand and Adam Clymer will make it so the Cleveland Indians will be able to at least contend in the American League a little bit, because I know that they're not the best team in the American League right now. American League playoff teams, I should say. The Royals are pretty bad. And I think that this will make them put up a fight.
I really like this deal for the Cleveland Indians. They already have a really good bullpen once Andrew Miller gets back. Allen at the end of their bullpen. Brad Hand was the best reliever on the market, and I heard rumors that he's in the first year of a 3-year deal. So not only are the Padres getting one of the best relievers in the majors, they're getting one of the best relievers in the majors with some contingency on the end of that. So some length to his contract. I heard people talking that it was going to take maybe 2 to 3 prospects to pry Brad Hand away from the Padres, and the Indians were able to get the best reliever that was available and another solid reliever for Mejia. And I get it. Mejia is a top 10 prospect or top 20 in the major leagues, but he's still a prospect. He's a great player, great young player. He's still a prospect. So Hand and Clymer, they are both guys that have proven themselves at the major league level. We have seen from players that there is still a large gap between AAA and the major league level. And Mejia, it is still not proven, or we still don't know how he's going to perform at the major league level, hence the term prospect. So I think that if I'm the Cleveland Indians, I'm really happy with this deal. Games just got a little bit shorter in Cleveland and in the AL Central. And if I'm the Padres, I'm also really excited about this deal. I know that the Padres signed Eric Hosmer to this really long deal. Or was it 5 years? 7 years? Something around there. And he hasn't really panned out, but we know Eric Hosmer's an every other year guy. Will Myers has been playing very well. So if I'm Mejia, maybe we can make a run at the NL West. If I'm the Padres, maybe we can make a run at the NL West in 2-3 years, maybe, with the talent that we have. I think this is a win-win for both teams.
Yeah, I just did a quick old Google search. You know how fast Google is. Eric Hosmer's contract was 8 years, $144 million. I know he didn't sign with Kansas City because they weren't going to give him the 8th year. They were going to give him the 7th. Nobody deserves that much money. There it is. I said it. Another thing I want to talk about.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah. Oh, stupid. If the Royals would have signed him, they would have been put back 8 years. Really. If you think about it, they would have been set back 8 years of their rebuild. So dumb. I'm glad we didn't re-sign Eric Hosmer. Last thing I want to talk about on the MLB is Shohei Ohtani was cleared to start his throwing progression. I know, Shane, you might be thinking this. Wasn't Shohei Ohtani placed on the DL? They thought he hurt his UCL and we wouldn't see him until 2019? Well, you're right. Everybody thought that. But apparently he can throw again. So I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand injuries and stuff like this. If you didn't think someone's going to be able to play for an entire year, how is he just nah, I'm good?
Yeah.
But then there's guys like Andrew Luck where they're like, you can probably play right now. And he's like, nope. No, I cannot.
Speaking of football and the Kansas City Royals, Oh, Bubba Starling. You remember our friend Bubba Starling, right?
It's not my friend
Well,
because
'cause
he
he
decommitted
decided
from Nebraska.
yep. Well, he probably should have committed to Nebraska
Yep.
because as he was making his return to the AAA Storm Chasers up in Omaha, which I'm sure he's greeted to a warm welcome every time he takes the field.
He actually is. People like him.
His home is in Kansas. I don't remember. It's a town just outside of Kansas City he lives in. And he was just about to make his rehabs, or get fully back from his rehab. He made a couple starts with the Surprise Royals, and he fell out of bed and dislocated his finger, had to undergo emergency surgery. He's out 6 weeks, and we will never see Bubba Starling in the major leagues. I am convinced of it.
Which sucks because that's such a great baseball name.
Bubba Starling is a cool name.
That's
Even
a great
football.
baseball name.
Even in football, it's a good name.
Yeah. Great. It's just a great sports name.
Yeah.
It's one that works on every professional sports level.
Instead of after Taylor Martinez, you got, who was it, Tanner Lee?
No, after Taylor Martinez, we had Tommy Armstrong.
Oh, Tommy Armstrong.
Tanner Lee was this last year.
Right. Oh, jeez. Sorry. I don't know my Huskers football.
Well, yeah. Taylor Martinez was like 6 years ago.
I think Taylor Martinez was like yesterday because I'm a Mizzou fan, and that's the last time we played him was Taylor Martinez was.
Yeah, that was when we were Big 12.
And just think you could have went from I think you probably would have went Taylor Martinez to Bubba Starling.
Oh, I agree. I think if Bubba Starling was there, he probably would have beat out Armstrong. Because Armstrong was good with his legs, but he couldn't really throw very accurately. Which, I mean, we could use him for stuff, and every now and then he could throw the long ball, but Bubba Starling, he could, from his highlights I saw when he was thinking about going to Nebraska, I was like, this dude can pick people apart for real. So
He's a good football player.
yeah.
We'll go ahead and move on to the NBA. None of us here are really big NBA guys. But,
Yeah. I'd consider myself a casual NBA fan.
yeah, that's fair. I feel like you can say that. We're all casual NBA fans. But
I like my team more than you guys like your teams, though, I feel like.
you don't know who my team is, so
I don't think that's true at all.
back off. We both got really defensive just now. But NBA making some headlines in the summer. Seems like they always do. They kind of take away some of that light from ESPN. It was from when baseball's happening. Kawhi Leonard. Big storyline. Didn't want to play with the Spurs. Well, said he wanted to go to LA. Then he said he didn't want to go to the Lakers. Said he wanted to go to the Clippers. And now he is traded to the Toronto Raptors. Then he comes out and says, I don't want to play for the Raptors. So is is Kawhi just being a big old whiner baby?
Yes. I had two opinions on this trade the moment I saw it happen. I think I texted Shane, Toby, and Tuck this. Number one, I think Kawhi is being a big old baby. He wanted out of San Antonio. He got out of San Antonio. I think San Antonio front office made it clear that they were not going to trade him in conference. He wanted to go to LA, whether it be the Clippers or the Lakers. San Antonio said, no, we're not trading you in conference. Kawhi said, I want out of San Antonio, and so the Spurs, in probably the pettiest move ever, or not ever, but in recent memory, trade him to the opposite of Los Angeles, trade him to Toronto for him to spend this final year. He'll end up with the Lakers next offseason. I also think that if I'm the Spurs culture has changed so much since Tim Duncan left. Tim Duncan left this year, and now Kawhi and Tony Parker left this year. I assume that Manu Ginobili, this is his last year, if he even makes it this year. But I feel like if I'm the Spurs, this is one of the best trades that they could have made. DeMar DeRozan is an all-star player. I've seen a lot of tweets that people are like, build him a statue in Toronto, even though they really haven't done anything with him in Toronto. I feel like DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge could be a great 1-2 punch and take the Spurs to the playoffs. And with the way that Greg Popovich in the front office has drafted, this could be a Spurs team that is rebuilding while still making the playoffs or for the next couple years with Aldridge and DeRozan, Ginobili. So I feel like we could label this the Spurs team is now in a soft / Spurs rebuild, while the Toronto Raptors, I feel like they just made this trade once they saw LeBron go to the Western Conference. They just saw that they just made this trade and they said, all right, now we have to beat the Celtics. They're putting all their eggs in the 2018-2019 basket, and they're like, this is what we've got to do. And I don't think it'll work. But it's a good try.
Either. But I think the reason DeMar was so loved by Toronto, and I think it's a great reason, he was a great teammate. You know, he was never like the selfish guy. He was the guy who was going to do everything he could to help the Raptors win in any way possible. So when you lose a guy like that to a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who is literally the exact opposite, I think Toronto fans have every right to be upset about this, because you're getting the exact opposite player that you wanted. Maybe not skills-wise, but like attitude-wise. But Stephen A. Smith had an all-time quote about this. I don't usually like Stephen A. Smith because he throws out a huge reaction to anything that happens just to like get retweets and stuff. So I don't think he's very accurate all the times. He's just trying to get attention. But this was awesome when he said, this is him talking about Kawhi Leonard. This is what happens when you only play 9 games but act like you played 82. You get exiled to another country. Kawhi may be big time, but evidently not big enough due to either reputation, representation, or something to land where he wants when he wants. Enjoy Canada for a year. See you in LA eventually. I thought that was awesome. Just literally put him on blast on Twitter there. Sorry. But I think he's totally correct on this one. Kawhi, like, he didn't play at all last season. He played 9 games. Even when he was cleared to healthy to play, he like refused to play because of some disputes with either Pop or the trainer or whatever he was claiming. So to go out and demand like, no, I'm going where I want, when I want, is absolutely ridiculous. I think he got what he deserved, and I think his career will always have that reputation of, you know, he's not a team guy, he's a me guy.
I think you could say that, but up until that point, Kawhi Leonard hasn't been known for much. You know, he's been known for what he does on the floor. He's been a pretty quiet guy. Everybody knows that he's been not a guy who's been outspoken. I don't know if I could pick out Kawhi Leonard's voice, and if you gave me 5 different voices, I don't think I could tell you which one was his, because I don't think I've heard. Same thing with Mike Trout. But I think that it's just one of those things. It's a very good trade for both sides, I'd say. Both sides got a good deal. If you think, probably the Spurs got the better end of the deal, getting DeMar DeRozan, a younger star. Probably you're going to be able to build around him more than you're going to be able to build around Kawhi, because Kawhi's going to leave next year. Let's be honest. Unless they win a championship, Kawhi's going to leave next year. Which, I mean, everybody knows that the Warriors are just going to win a championship again next year. So, yeah, there's
He'll probably go to the Warriors. I don't know.
Don't even say that. It's not even, like, funny.
It's not funny because it could happen.
You're right. It's
something that could happen.
So we'll move on to the next NBA story. I found this to be interesting. Do you remember earlier in the offseason when Carmelo Anthony was flexing on in the Insta, flexing on the gram?
Oh, yeah.
About how he got his... Well, which is wild. He didn't even get an extension. He just accepted his player option. And so he's like, yeah, I'm back, baby. Stay mellow. And now, Oklahoma City sends Carmelo Anthony to the Hawks for, I believe, Dennis Schroeder. It's a 3-team trade. It's kind of a complex 3-team trade, but this is really the big part here. OKC gets Dennis Schroeder. Melo goes to the Hawks. Melo is going to be waived from the Hawks. So basically, Melo will be a free agent and can go wherever he wants to go.
I don't have much to say about this. I don't know. I mean, I just think Melo is... at this point, he's overrated. I think people hang on to how good he used to be, and they just don't want to admit that he's definitely lost a few steps. I mean, look at him last year in OKC. Like, they should have been a far better team than they were with Russell Wilson, Melo, and God, I can't think of his name right now.
PG, playoff P.
Yeah, Paul George. playoff P. They should have been contenders for real, but they barely stumbled their way through a couple playoff games and just kind of fizzled out. Melo is just not what he used to be when he was back with the Knicks and he was tearing everyone up. I think people just don't want to let him go. They don't want to lose that thought of him because he was always that guy that was like, when you were talking about who's the best player right now, he was the guy that you'd be like, don't sleep on Melo. Melo was always that guy who was kind of not necessarily the first guy you'd think of, but when someone brought him up, you were like, oh shit, you're right. Melo is actually killing it right now. So people like talking about him, and I think we just got stuck in a rut with Melo, and now he kind of sucks.
Melo is really good on a team. Melo's a ball hog. Melo's really good on a team where he is the final destination for the ball. Somebody passes him the ball. Allen Iverson passes him the ball. He's really good there. But when he was on the Knicks, he was okay for a year, and then that was when we had Linsanity. And then the question was, who's going to take care of the ball, Carmelo or Linsanity? Then Porzingis was there, and then it was, Porzingis was the better player, but Carmelo's the bigger name. So it was stuff like that. He demanded the ball, even though Porzingis was better. And then he went to OKC, where he's a ball hog, but Russell Westbrook needs his 40 shots a night. And then playoff P, I can't really tell you much about him. I had never paid that much attention to the Pacers, but he's being traded for a point guard in Schroeder who passes the ball much more often, much less selfish. The Hawks or Thunder, somebody's essentially paying Carmelo Anthony $27 million to not play basketball for them next season.
Yep.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. I think it would be stupid for the Houston Rockets to try to sign him because James Harden is already that scorer that Carmelo is, and James Harden is 40 times better than Carmelo Anthony is right now. So he's the final destination for the ball. I couldn't tell you where Carmelo could go because I couldn't tell you where he'd be a good fit.
I agree with you about Carmelo being – he needs to be on a team where he's the guy to take the last shot because if you look at when Oklahoma City was good last year, it was when Russell Westbrook was like, screw this, I'm not passing the ball to anyone, putting up like 80 shots, and they were good. That's when they won their playoff games, is when he took all the shots. So if the Rockets were to pick up Melo, they would have to be the same deal. They would only be good when James Harden basically shuts out Melo and doesn't pass him the ball, and then why are you paying him $27 million or whatever his contract would be at that point? Right. So I think it'd be a waste of money for them to pick up Melo.
I think Melo only thrives on bad teams too.
Yeah.
If you think about this, he played for a Denver Nuggets squad where in his early seasons where he was the man, he needed the ball, he got knocked out in the playoffs a lot. He went to the Knicks. Knicks weren't a very good squad. He was a final destination for the ball. He scored J.R. Smith. He'd get mad at J.R. Smith because he'd take shots. Now he goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have the potential to be a very good squad. But because Melo demands the ball to play well, he doesn't play well because Russell Westbrook is the same way. He demands the ball to play well. And it just didn't work out. And I don't know where Carmelo Anthony is going to go. Maybe he goes back to the Nuggets. Isaiah Thomas is there now.
Yeah. He kind of reminds me of the guy who's like just a stud JV guy. Like if there was All-State JV, he'd be the All-State JV guy. So they're like, all right, we need to bring him up to a better team. He's obviously playing really well. Then when he gets up there, the chemistry isn't right. He still wants to be the man, even though there's people with equal or better talent than him, and he just can't deal with that. He's got to be the man, otherwise he lets his ego get in the way.
Right? No, I can see that. That's a good analogy right there.
I'm popping out analogies left and right tonight.
I love it. We'll go ahead and wrap up this show with our final thoughts. Shane, do you want to go ahead and kick off your final thought?
Yeah, for final thoughts, I just thought about this while we were doing this today. I'm going to start doing like this day in sports history for my final thoughts. And today in sports history, July 19th when we're recording this. I should probably do the 20th when we release it. I'll do both. So July 19th when we're recording this, a little time travel here, the Cleveland Indians shortstop Neil Ball executed an unassisted triple play, which I didn't really think was possible.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that would work. But
let me
think
explain
it's
it to
dope.
you here.
Okay.
Shane. Well, it's a very specific scenario. I'll tell you that. So there has to be both runners. It has to be a double steal. There has to be runners on first, and there has to be runners on second. This is the most common on assisted triple play. Mm-hmm. So there has to be runners on first and second. It has to be a double steal. Okay. There has to be a line drive right up the middle. Obviously, you see the Cleveland shortstop Neil Ball did it. So your shortstop, you're going to cover second base, right? So on the steal, there's a line drive hit right up the middle, right at second base. The shortstop catches it. That's 1 out. Steps on the bag at second, which is 2 outs because the runner has to tag up. Tags the guy stealing, which is 3 outs.
That is an incredibly specific play, and I bet that's what happened. I don't know.
Hey, I'm sure it is what happened because...
Yeah, I can't think of another way that would happen.
I think it happened... When did it happen? It happened to the White Sox, didn't it? It was probably 2000... I want to say it was 2012. Maybe earlier, 2010. Anywhere between 9 and 12 is what Kieran says. We'll look it up. But do you have what happened on the 20th in history?
Yeah, so July 20th, 1970, Dodgers Bill Singer no-hits the Phillies 5-0, giving up no walks. So good job, Bill.
That is impressive, no walks.
Yeah, that's super impressive.
Okay, let's see here. The last unassisted triple play in the major leagues was pulled off by second baseman Eric Burnett of the 2009 Philadelphia Phillies. So, KB and I were right on our range of between 09 and 012. KB,
2012.
What's your final thought?
I'm just super excited. The trade deadline is my favorite time of the year. I love trades, and I'm a fan of teams that don't normally make trades. So I love the trade deadline. I love the mix-up of teams. Brad Hand and Manny Machado getting dealt is exciting to me. I don't know why. I don't really care about the Dodgers or the Indians that much, but I just love the trade deadline, and I can't wait for more to come.
I had a final thought, but I forgot it. Oh, I do remember my final thought. My final thought is my favorite NBA team. I'll announce it right here on this podcast. If you listen to this podcast, you will be the first people to know who my favorite NBA team. Even before Twitter, you will know.
Even before Toby.
Even before Toby. My favorite NBA team is the New York Knicks. I am a New York Knicks fan. I am hopping on the struggle bus, the pain train, whatever you want to call it. But I am a New York Knicks fan from now on. Big Kevin Knox guy, like that draft pick there. I'll have a blog, actually, about why I chose the New York Knicks coming up in the recent days.
Congratulations. I know this is a big decision for you.
Yeah. It's a lot of consideration. I believe I started in, May. It's
been a long time coming.
Yeah, I started my process in May, and I finally decided after conversations with many people that the New York Knicks were my landing spot.
We're all proud of you.
Oh, I appreciate it. I think that'll do it for this week's episode of Nosebleed Radio. For the boys, KB, Kieran Brennan, and Shane Miller, I'm Tucker Franklin. Thanks for tuning in to the 22nd edition of Nosebleed Radio. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at NosebleedSnow. Like us on Facebook, Nosebleed Knowledge. We may have some more video content coming up in the coming weeks. We'll all four be together, so there's a potential for some video content. I know you guys like that, so we'll try to pump some out. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys on the flip.